If you haven't muted your microphone, please take the opportunity to do so. My name is Tim X. Lee. I have been brought here as a scientific authority on video meeting technology. I am a Zoom meeting expert. Someone muted my microphone. I didn't know you could do that. All right, well, please don't do that again. To conduct effective Zoom meetings, you must understand the 80-20 rule. 80% of the people are only listening 20% of the time. Now, I'm going to have to repeat that 5 times so 100% of you hear it. What is the most important thing in Zoom meetings? The most important thing is to look important. How important and how do you look important? Important questions. Let's start with how to look important. There's things you can do to look important in a Zoom meeting. Number 1, take control of the screen. When you take control of the screen, you're taking control of your future. Number 2, if you're showing a chart, say the data comes from an impressive source. That credibility gives you credibility. Casually mention a meeting with a high-level executive. Make sure everyone understands you're on a first-name basis. You're in the big leagues. Now, at this point, I'd like to take control of the screen. What we're looking at here is a very interesting study. It's a study of the number of Cheetos consumed versus the number of cats in the house. It comes directly from a 2020 Harvard University study of foods marketed with a cat to cat people. Now, one of the more interesting things you will notice is that there appears to be no relationship between the number of Cheetos consumed in the house and the number of cats until you get to 3 or more cats, at which point the Cheeto consumption drops off a cliff. A very puzzling result until you factor in that Cheetos is a food you eat with friends. And people with lots of cats have no friends. No one comes to visit them because their whole house smells like a litter box. Now, I was having lunch with Bob Bauer. Bob and I meet up a couple times a week for coffee just to discuss the direction of the company. And Bob had an interesting take. Bob says, you know what you're not looking at here, Tim? You're forgetting that Cheetos is marketed with a male cat. And maybe it is that tomcat that is frightening all the cats in the house. Now, I'm not someone who sucks up just to try and get promoted, but Bob, that was an amazing interpretation. You were operating at the next level. Another thing you're going to need to know to be successful in a Zoom meeting is you are going to need to know your audience. Here's some tips for understanding your audience, what they do and what it means. If they have a blurred background, that means I live with my parents. Beautiful scenery background, I wish I was on vacation. CGI background, I'd rather be playing video games. If their microphone off, if you heard how I really talk, you'd have to fire me. And camera off. Another tip I can give you to draw your audience into a Zoom meeting is make it about them. Make your presentation about the different departments within the company, no matter how obscure it is. Here's something about fuzzy logic, which is an alternative to Boolean logic. Boolean logic is the form of logic that's at the heart of our computer system. And Boolean logic says that every statement is either true or false based on the law of the excluded middle. You can either be a member of a set or not a member of a set, but you can't be both at the same time. Fuzzy logic is an alternative view that allows for things to be partially true. Here's an example. We can think of water when it's frozen at 0 degrees Celsius. It's 100% true the water is cold. But as that water gradually gets warmer and warmer, it becomes less and less true that the water is cold, and more true that the water is hot. This is how good of an employee you are versus how often you lie. As you lie more and more often, it becomes less and less true that you are a good employee, and more true that you are a good manager. If you lie too much, at some point your employees don't know what to believe, and at that point you have to move into sales. One last tip to make your Zoom meetings pop. Take whatever topic you're talking about and tie it to a personal story. Here's an example. Electronegativity. This is a measure of an atom's ability to bind shared electrons. What you're looking at here is hydrogen chloride. The hydrogen and the chlorine share a single pair of electrons, but the electrons are essentially hogged by the chlorine atom because of its high electronegativity. I've discovered another property I'm calling blanket negativity. It turns out I married a woman with a very high blanket negativity. We go to bed at night sharing a single blanket, which is clearly big enough to cover both of us. But because of her high blanket negativity, at which point she does what I call the pig in a blanket maneuver. Now, what if you're in the position where you can't take control of the screen? How can you make yourself seem important? Answer someone's question. It makes you seem knowledgeable. And the easiest question to answer is your own. Remember the 80-20 rule. 80% of the people won't even realize that you're answering your own question. Now, do I answer my own questions? No. No, I don't. Why don't I answer my own questions? I think it's beneath me. Should you answer your own questions? Yeah, go ahead. You might need to. Now, I hope you learned enough that you can have the same success with your Zoom meetings that I have with mine. Thank you for joining me.